I'm going to try a bit of a new perspective today. Hello everyone. I know it's been a while, but this is my next video. I recently went on a trip to Seoul. I went to Hongdae, Gangnam, and Itaewon. But I want to talk about some things that I've been thinking about for a while. This video is going to be 5 things that they don't really tell you about teaching here in South Korea, specifically through EPIK. Number 1, students can't be punished, not in a way that matters. Years ago, they used to have corporal punishment. The students could be physically hit as a form of punishment if they were disruptive or misbehaving. I believe that when Korea joined the UN, or whatever, I think the EUCLA, whatever it's called, of course this was deemed inhumane, and so Korea backpedaled and removed corporal punishment. However, they didn't really place any actual form of punishment in place, and so now there's no real way to punish students. Some teachers will yell, some teachers will chastise them, but there's not much real consequence to student misbehaving. And so this kind of leads to a lot of unexpected things that happen in the classroom. If you come from any place like America or wherever, you know, you get in trouble, there are consequences. You get suspended, you get detention, and not only that, your parents get mad at you. But here, parents expect the teachers to do more of the raising of their children. It's kind of strange, but when your child is in school for more than 10 hours out of the day, the parenting role kind of does go to the teacher, even though it shouldn't. And so that falls on the teachers. But if you're just a teacher who has no form of power over a student, how can you really discipline them, you know? So this causes many problems. A lot of teachers, a lot of English teachers and foreign teachers come in surprised at the behavior of some of the students because they don't really expect this kind of behavior. You know, in America, if you're bad, then it's made very clear right away, like, you're going to be punished and you're going to get in trouble. Here, like, if I were to, in America, get out of my seat, start talking to one of my friends, I'd instantly be in trouble. Korean students do this normally, every single day, especially if you can't manage to find a way to gain control over your students. There are several methods to keeping a class under control, but like without a form of punishment, it becomes a lot more difficult. Another big thing that they don't really tell you about is desk warming. Desk warming, if you can't figure it out just by the name, is when you just sit at your desk in the office and do nothing for the day. When you have no classes, no students to teach, nothing going on, you just sit at a desk and desk warm. They used to have it so that if your school allowed it and you were finished with all your classes, you could just go home and not have to worry about anything after that. But some people didn't think this was fair because their school didn't allow them to leave when they were finished with class, and so now every teacher has to desk warm. If you have just one class in the day and you teach that one class as the first period in the morning, and all you're going to do for the rest of the day is sit in the office and do nothing, you have to sit there. If you have no classes, you have to sit there, and the first few times you do it, it's fine. But when you get to like the winter break and it's literally just weeks and weeks on end just sitting at a desk, just either lesson planning or just goofing off because there's nothing to do, it can wear on you really hard. Like, I was ready for a break when I first got here. When winter break came here, it certainly gave me a break, but then after a while I was ready for there to be classes. I was ready because I just sitting at a desk all day. I guess if you've ever worked like in a cubicle or that type of office setting, you would probably understand it. It wears on you, and it's probably one of the only bad things about this job. One of the worst things, I'd definitely say. Another thing is your lesson planning. You might think that, oh, I'm a teacher now, I get to choose, I can make my own lessons and plan it my own way. And in some cases that is true, but depending on your school, you have to abide by what your co-teacher says is okay to teach. So if your co-teacher says we have to abide strictly by the textbook, no games, no fun, no anything like that, you have to abide by the textbook. If your co-teacher says teach however you want, then you have complete freedom and free range to teach however you want. There are good and bad things to this. On the one hand, if your co-teacher says that you have to abide by the textbook, then you already have a structure in place that you need to follow, assuming that the textbook is good. You just have to create a lesson around the material that's handed to you. On the other side, if you want that creative freedom, you won't have it, and you can't make the classes more entertaining or make it fun for the students. If you have the complete freedom to make your lessons however you want, then you have free range and you can do whatever you want. And personally, for me, I'm not very creative, so I sometimes enjoy only having to use the textbook, because at least it gives me something to work with, and it gives me a guide to help myself build my lessons. But understandably so, sometimes the material that's given in these books is not always the best, and typically these books are teaching on a phrase-by-phrase basis, which is very different to how normal language classes would go in America or something. As the English teacher, the native English teacher, we teach phrase by phrase each week. Phrases like, how are you, and what are you doing tomorrow, things like that. It's not so much teaching grammar and whatnot. The teaching of grammar and other reading and writing rules goes to your Korean co-teacher. They have the training and they're more familiar with those types of things. So as a teacher in Korea, you're going to focus more on teaching listening and speaking classes, and as I said, depending on what your school wants, either abiding by a textbook or having a certain amount of freedom to teach whatever you want. Number 4, you're expected to be flexible, and by that I mean you have to be ready for any sudden changes in your schedule or how school is going to go a certain day. In Korea, you're expected to just be completely flexible to any kind of situation, even if it is inconvenient to you or even if it doesn't really make any sense at all. There are so many times where you'll go in expecting to teach your normal class, and then out of nowhere you get news saying, hey, this class is canceled. And that's fine. I mean, it happens. This class is canceled for whatever reason. Maybe there's an event going on that day. But then there are times where they say, hey, can you teach a 3rd grade class today? And you're not even a 3rd grade teacher. So it's random stuff like that. And I've encountered it even in America dealing with Koreans. It's such a strange thing, but I've read stories and I've had friends who tell me yeah, the first day of school, they just took me into the auditorium and I was put right in front of everyone who was there and introduced, and I had to give some sort of speech even though I wasn't ready. The amount of flexibility that they expect you to have is honestly absurd, but that's a part of this culture apparently. And so you have to be ready and you have to be open to, I don't say you have to be open because sometimes it's absurd, but you have to be prepared a lot of the time for anything that could happen. Classes could be randomly scheduled, classes could be randomly added to your list for the day, and randomly something can happen and your co-teacher expects you to be able to do it. No one really asks you if you're busy or if you have time to do something, they just expect you to do it. And sometimes it can be really extremely frustrating, especially if you had no plans for the day and you were just going to go home and relax, and then something came up and your co-teacher's like, we should probably do this now, and without any consideration to your schedule or time. It's definitely one of the more frustrating things. But it's not always bad. Sometimes there are good surprises. Sometimes. Last one, number 5, students can't fail. And when I say they can't fail, I mean it's literally illegal for a school to fail a student. This kind of goes back into what I was saying at the beginning of the video about how like there's no consequence for students misbehaving. Students legally cannot fail. Students who potentially bomb every single test and don't put forth any effort could get the same result as a student who tries their best but fails everything. As a foreigner, this to me is absurd, but I hear this is also the case in some other Asian countries, but it kind of lessens the value of the education when a student who doesn't try anything and is passed because they can't be failed is put in the same score category as a student who tries their best but always fails. There's a lot of differences in culture, and I can understand that. This is just one of those things I personally can't really come to accept. It just goes along with the fact that there's no consequence to not trying. Like the only grade that I get as an English teacher is the speaking test score, and that score, one, it's not many points at all. Like I feel like it barely impacts their score, but also the lowest score that I was able to give is 4 out of 10 in some cases, and in other cases 6 out of 10. So there's no way for a student to score a 0 or anything. I've had students who literally do not speak at all during the test, and I have to lump them in the same score as a student who tries to speak but can't really do much at all. And so it's a bit frustrating going into the whole students, there's no consequence for anything basically. It's one of those things that makes you question the value of education. Korea is one of the top rated countries when it comes to education, probably top 10 I think, but it's hard to say that there's true value in the education when everyone is passed and there's no risk of failing, and students who don't try are lumped in the same category as students who try but fail. It's just a difference in opinion maybe, and maybe I can't accept the difference in culture, but I personally don't really like this aspect of it. So that's all of the things I wanted to talk about today. I know this video might sound a bit more negative, and that's just, I think that's how it has to be when it comes to things that they don't tell you about, but things that you should probably know. I really wanted to cover these things. I feel like I might have left out a few things. So if you can think of anything else, if you've been a teacher here, please leave a comment and tell anyone new trying to come teach here what they should also expect. But I hope you all who are watching this have learned something. I know there was a huge gap between this video and my last video. I got really busy and some stuff happened, friends were leaving and all this other stuff, but I'm going to try my best to be consistent with my videos again. So let me know what you think of this video, let me know what topics you want to hear, and I will try to get another video up and going as soon as possible. Thank you for everything. Ciao.